Hello and welcome to this presentation about camera techniques for pedagogic filmmaking. This is all about how you frame shots and sequences of shots for impact in teaching and learning. My name is Dr. Robert O'Toole. I'm a National Teaching Fellow and Senior Academic Technologist at Warwick, and I've been making videos for educational purposes for many years. And what we have here is a selection of examples from a wide range of sources, some of them professional productions from the BBC, for example, and some of them that I've made myself and other people have made at Warwick. So let's have a look at the first example. So here we can see a wide-angle landscape. Typically you see this at the start of a film. It's used as an establishing shot. Now in this case it's a BBC production, and they've obviously gone out on location, got there exactly the right time to capture the sunrise or sunset, and they filmed it in very high quality, so high definition. If you don't have the budget to do that, and very few of us have, you can still achieve an effect like this by using a still image, a high quality still image, and adding onto it something called the Ken Burns drift, which is an effect named after the documentary filmmaker Ken Burns, which you see quite often. It's a still image, and you can apply an effect in iMovie, for example, where the camera seems to drift from a starting point to an ending point. It may drift across the image, or it may drift out of the image, zooming out or zooming in, whatever works. And you could add some sound effects to that to make it seem like real video. So here is something quite different. You might, after making the establishing shot, move on to some handheld shots. They can get the audience into the action, which is what I've achieved here in this lab situation. So I was following these guys around their lab as they were showing me things and introducing people. Use smart looking overlay titles to give a sense of context and expertise, and this is a standard title in iMovie. For this sequence I followed Christos around the lab and introduced people and projects using a Rode Video Mic Pro shotgun mic attached to the top of the camera, which along with some noise elimination in iMovie gave good enough results. So here again is another professional shot from a BBC documentary, and you can see it's a point of view shot. So we are as an audience looking upwards at something from the point of view of the experts who are going to be telling us about it. And that can include the hands, head and body of the person from whose point of view we're looking. And you could also, if you can't actually film the thing, use a still image with Ken Burns drift to save money, time, and make it easier to do. So who's looking at this point of view? So here's, we reversed the point of view now to see the people who are actually looking up. It's Michael Scott and Alexander Armstrong there, and they're looking upwards towards that. Now you may show the point, from the point of view first with them talking over the top and then switch to this shot, or do it the other way. I think in this case they were walking towards the building, looking up and talking about it, and then we switched to the shot looking upwards at the building. And here's another one from the same programme, and this is something that they use, and you see this quite a lot in BBC documentaries. So it's over the shoulder of somebody who isn't an expert facing the expert, and you can see Michael there is explaining all about something. Alexander Armstrong, when it cuts back to his face, you can see that he looks inquisitive, slightly baffled, amazed, and watch the eyebrows move. So it's cutting between that shot over Alexander's shoulder and then back to Alexander to give us a sense of the expert explaining it to us and Alexander being the proxy for the audience. So he's our representative there. Here's another classic shot, a mid-angle, mid-width shot, puts an expert into their habitat and lets them tell us the story. Notice how a lot of shots in educational filmmaking are about getting experts to explain things. Again, as with Michael Scott there, this is an expert, and this guy's going to go around explaining things to us. And following on from that, you might want to include a close-up on the detail with the experts explaining what they're doing. You could use a voiceover as well. In a pedagogical movie, don't be afraid of freezing the action, adding captions, arrows and diagrams, etc. Okay, this makes it a bit different to the kind of thing you get on the BBC, because we shouldn't be afraid of adding extra information for teaching purposes, just to make things clear. Now, speaking of which, another technique that you might use where you freeze things, zoom in, add annotations, make things very clear is screen capture. So that's another kind of close-up on the detail. Software like ScreenFlow on the Mac, Camtasia on Windows captures the screen and allows for zooming in, highlighting, adding annotations and voiceovers. Okay, again, another way of framing some experts here. We've got a seated interview shot. Now, I could have just put the camera face onto these guys, but actually it's a bit more interesting to have it at an angle with the computer in the middle. And that big screen is showing the website that they're talking about as a prop. And I've interspersed that with screen captures as well of the website in action and close-up shots of each interviewee. Okay, so I actually did that with two cameras. I had this shot and I had another camera that was pointing from another direction, and I was able to intersperse this shot with some close-ups of the individual speaking. Different kind of interview shot here. This is a mid-view, mid-shot interview, and I'm using the natural environment, which makes audio recording a little bit more difficult. I shot this one on the Rode VideoMic Pro attached to the top of the camera rather than using a complicated radio mic setup, and put some noise elimination in there. But it was actually nice to get the background sounds of the birds and get those lovely trees in the shot as well. Now with these guys, these are students, and not as confident, say, as Alexander Armstrong and Michael Scott. So I had to allow them to pause quite a lot. So I lined this up in a position where they were comfortable, and we were able to stop. They would look down at their notes and then carry on. And I was able to edit using cross dissolves between those different shots, and that worked very nicely. Notice again the title on there, very smart, very professional looking. And finally, a very different kind of interview shot here. So this is a seated interview shot from some distance away. You can achieve a similar kind of thing with people walking together and talking together. But what you do need to do with this one is use a radio mic or an MP3 recorder that's close up to the people, so that you can capture the sound in the distance. So on the video camera that I'm using, I've got a Sennheiser radio mic I would be using, and have one of these guys with the radio mic clipped onto them. I'm making sure they're not too far apart, so that single radio mic transmitter can pick up the voices of both of them. Now, this is a classic BBC technique. You see this all the time, a reporter walking through a crowded street, talking through radio mic to camera some distance away. And it gives you a sense of the people in context. This is a particularly good one. You can see here Alexander Armstrong is getting very animated and moving about, and Michael Scott there is playing the very calm expert. So here's something quite different. So long shots, again using the radio mic, but just a single person talking, and I applied a Ken Burns drift. So the top left-hand corner shot here, it's just me talking, and a Ken Burns drift, and I was just drifting in closer and closer to me, and then I moved across to the right to make space for a picture-in-picture. So this was done with a single static camera on a tripod, a radio mic, and then cropped in iMovie with a picture-in-picture added. And the way in which this movie then proceeded, it went through a whole series of those cards with me explaining what was on the card. So each one of those picture-in-pictures is of a card. Very different interview. This is a low-angle interview. Taking a low angle like this, getting people very close together is very intimate and engaging, so it brings the audience right in. In fact, this was a pure coincidence that I had to do this. We were filming this in a club where they, had they known we were filming an interview, would have charged us quite a lot of money to film in there. So I was actually filming this on the camera built into a MacBook, shooting straight into iMovie, and it worked really nicely. Group interviews don't have to be boring. Elke, from statistics here, used the opportunity to reverse the hierarchy between students and the teacher for reporting on this student engagement project. We used the Rode VideoMic Pro shotgun mic with just enough noise elimination in iMovie. And Elke was alternating with the students, sort of prompting them, guiding them on what to talk about, but trying not to be dominating the conversation, which is why she's got them positioned like this. So lectures, recording lectures. Lecturer shots don't have to be boring. You can see Ray Land here giving a lecture in the top right hand corner, and the big image is one of his slides. Again by accident, in this movie Ray, I was expecting him to stand further back, but he was actually pacing backwards and forwards animatedly along the front of the camera with very expressive body language, with his slides in the background. I then remixed the whole thing using ScreenFlow, with the slides added to the movie as images exported from PowerPoint. So you see Ray in that small image moving around a lot, getting very animated, talking to us. You hear him talking, but the main focus is on his slides, which were very, very good slides, very interesting. Here's a classic academic in front of a department shot. Gary Watt there, outside the law school, his department. Notice how I've framed that. I've got plenty of the background building in and some of the vegetation.
Well, hello, my name's Professor Gary Watt. I'm a professor in the law school, and I'm speaking today with my NTF, National Teaching Fellow, hat on. I was named a National Teaching Fellow in 2010. This followed a prize I was really honoured to receive in 2009 when I was named the UK Law Teacher of the Year.
So in that case, Gary talked very nicely, very effectively for a while, but at one point I hadn't realised he was going to do this. He started to talk about the importance of body language in the law. So later on, I shot some cutaways of his hands moving, so I shot quite a lot of this to make sure that I could then fit it in over the top of him speaking about those things. So it would cut away from that previous shot, show his hands doing things just in sync with him talking, and that worked really well. And you can see him moving his hands there. That's great. So something Gary also did was a shot where he was walking into shot from some distance away and talking at the same time. He was actually talking about the importance of getting outside and walking to help you to think and to help students to develop ideas. You can see on this shot actually it's not quite straight, so I wasn't using a tripod with a spirit level built in, but I did fix this in the final production. I fixed this by manipulating the layout of the image in ScreenFlow just a little bit. It didn't take much.
So the reason I've come outside to do this video is because when I take my students on their very first lesson in law and literature, we actually do it outside. And the point of that is to show that education is a carrying outside of the duct, a journey. And we come outside, the benefits of natural light are immense for the brain.
Okay, and finally here's classic head and shoulders shots. This is notice that the camera is a little bit lower than eye level, and that makes Gary look bigger and dominates the picture a little bit. So this is a personal intro with the context set in the background.
Well, hello, my name is Gary Watt, and I'm a professor in the law school here at the University of Warwick.
Okay, so well, thanks for listening to that. That's a whole series of shots that you may find useful in creating educational content. There's a lot more of them. The thing to do is to watch professionally produced programs from the BBC, for example, and just think about how they're using camera techniques and sound for educational purposes. Thank you.